Last summer, during a Canadian heat wave where it hit 34 degrees Celsius, that is 93 Fahrenheit, I was in my apartment at midnight. My fan was doing nothing but pushing hot air from one corner to the other. In that moment, I stumbled onto something that stopped me cold, no pun intended. Now I am Canadian, so when it hits 34 here, we are truly suffering. If you live in Texas, Florida, Arizona, or anywhere in the deep south where a heat wave means 40 degrees Celsius or 104 Fahrenheit for weeks at a time, I can only imagine what you go through. This information is for you even more than it is for me. Did you know that damp charcoal can drop room temperature by several degrees with zero electricity? I didn't know that either. I started looking into it and discovered this is a 3,000-year-old principle that Persian architects engineered into their buildings, which most of the modern world has completely forgotten about. Within 24 hours I had built it. The thermometer dropped 4 degrees Celsius, about 7 degrees Fahrenheit, in just 2 hours. It cost $7, required no electricity, had no moving parts, and took 15 minutes to build. Here is exactly what I'm going to show you. How the physics works. It takes 30 seconds and you will get it instantly. The exact parts you need, where to get them, and how to put it together in under 15 minutes before the next heatwave hits. I will also show you how to build versions of this for any size space, whether it is a bedroom, a barn, a chicken coop, a dog kennel, a camper van, or a dorm room. It is the same principle, the same price, and the same 15 minutes. Let's go. Before I explain the physics, here is the number that made me take this seriously. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have documented that charcoal-based evaporative coolers can drop room temperature by up to 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, which is 18 to 27 degrees Fahrenheit, below the outside air temperature. A 2018 study published in the Journal of Post-Harvest Technology measured inside temperatures running 10 to 15 degrees Celsius cooler than the ambient air. Another 2022 study published in the Journal of Engineering and Applied Science documented a maximum temperature drop of 11 degrees Celsius or 20 degrees Fahrenheit in a single room. These are not just backyard experiments. These are controlled, peer-reviewed measurements of exactly the kind of build I'm about to show you. In a heat wave, 10 to 15 degrees Celsius is the difference between sleeping and not sleeping, or between functioning and not functioning, and it costs $7. Now here is the 30 seconds of physics that explains why it works. You already know that evaporation cools things down. That is your body's entire heat management system. Sweat evaporates and pulls heat from your skin, cooling you down. The hotter and drier the air is, the faster this works. It is why 40 degrees Celsius in Arizona feels survivable, while 30 degrees Celsius in Montreal feels like a punishment. What activated charcoal does is take that principle and supercharge it. A single gram of activated charcoal has a surface area of between 500 and 500 square meters. It is the most porous natural material known to exist. That is not a typo. 1 gram has the surface area of a small apartment in a piece of material the size of your thumbnail. All of those microscopic pores hold water. When warm, dry air moves across that wet surface, evaporation happens on an enormous scale relative to the material's size. The air moving through loses energy to the phase change and comes out the other side cooler and cleaner. It is cooler because of the evaporation and cleaner because activated charcoal simultaneously absorbs and chemically binds to volatile organic compounds, odors, airborne bacteria, mold spores, and a range of particulates. This is the same material that water filter manufacturers put in their products and the same material used in air purifiers retailing for $200 to $400. It does its job passively and continuously for free as long as you keep it damp. 1 tray of charcoal cools the air, filters the air, and removes odors simultaneously for $7. If you have animals, a barn, a chicken coop, a rabbit hutch, or a dog kennel, that last function alone is worth the price of admission. The smell that builds up in animal enclosures during summer heat is a combination of ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, and various organic compounds that activated charcoal is specifically documented to absorb. You are not masking the smell with something else. You are chemically removing it from the air. Here is a quick bit of history because this is worth knowing. Persian architects were building wind towers called bajirs as far back as 1000 BCE and possibly earlier. A badger is a tall shaft built into or alongside a building with openings at the top to catch prevailing winds and channel them downward into the rooms below. At the base of the shaft, Persian builders placed wet charcoal and saturated clay pots. The air was forced through the damp material before entering the room, cooling it by 4 to 6 degrees Celsius or 7 to 11 degrees Fahrenheit through evaporation before it ever touched a person. The most famous surviving badger is in Yazd, Iran, a city that sits in one of the driest deserts on Earth and has been continuously inhabited for over 7,000 years. Summer temperatures in Yazd regularly exceed 40 degrees Celsius. The buildings with badgers, documented by architectural researchers from the University of New South Wales, maintained interior temperatures consistently 8 to 12 degrees Celsius, lower than the outside air during peak afternoon heat. No electricity, no refrigerant, just wet charcoal and airflow. They figured this out 3,000 years ago. We surrounded ourselves with air conditioners and forgot. Here is what you need for the basic build. First, activated charcoal, the kind sold for aquarium filters. You want loose black granules in a bag, available at any pet store or on Amazon. A 500-gram bag costs $5 to $8 and is enough to fill a standard baking tray. You can also use activated charcoal sold for air purifiers or bulk horticultural charcoal, which runs slightly cheaper per gram. Do not use barbecue charcoal briquettes. That is a completely different material. It is not porous in the same way and won't produce the same result. Use activated charcoal only. Next, you need a shallow tray or container, a baking pan, a plastic storage tray, or a wooden box lined with plastic sheeting. Anything that holds the charcoal in a layer and allows air to move across it will work. Spread the charcoal in a layer roughly 3 to 5 centimeters deep. Then add water. Pour it over the charcoal until the granules are fully saturated and just beginning to pool at the bottom. Let it absorb for 5 minutes, then drain any standing water. You want the charcoal wet, but not sitting in puddles, saturated like a wet sponge. Finally, you need a source of airflow. An open window with a natural breeze works well, but a battery-powered or USB fan is better. Even a small one aimed across the tray dramatically increases the evaporation rate and cooling effect. For a fully passive, zero electricity version, position the tray in the path of the prevailing breeze from your coolest window. That is it. $6 to $8 in 30 minutes of your time. Here is how to get the most out of it. Placement matters more than size. A damp charcoal tray sitting on a table in the middle of a room does almost nothing because the moist air just rises and mixes without cooling the space you're actually in. Place the tray on the floor near the air intake, the window or door where outside air enters the room, so all incoming air passes across the charcoal before it reaches you. That is the difference between a curiosity and a system. Re-wet the charcoal every morning. It will dry out overnight as evaporation continues, and a dry tray is just a tray of charcoal doing nothing. 30 seconds with a cup of water every morning, and it is back to work. For a small room like a bedroom, home office, camper van, or dorm room, one standard baking tray size unit is meaningful. For a larger space, scale up. 2 or 3 trays placed at different air intake points in the same room will compound the effect. For animal enclosures and outbuildings, here is the version that works. Build a simple frame from scrap wood, a shallow box open on 2 sides to allow airflow and closed on top. Line it with hardware cloth or mesh and fill it with activated charcoal 6 to 8 centimeters deep. Mount it in the ventilation opening of the coop, hutch, barn, or shed, the gap where air enters. Every breath of wind coming in will pass through the charcoal. The air that reaches your animals will be cooler, cleaner, and dramatically lower in ammonia and odor compounds. For a chicken coop in July, this is not just a comfort upgrade, it is a welfare improvement. Heat stress in poultry begins around 30 degrees Celsius and becomes fatal above 38 degrees Celsius. Anything that drops incoming air temperature meaningfully matters. The wall-mounted version for a house works the same way. A charcoal-filled frame set into a window opening or mounted in front of an exhaust fan, pulling hot air through the charcoal before expelling it and allowing cooler, evaporatively conditioned air to replace it. One honest note, Evaporative cooling works best when humidity is below about 50%. In dry climates like the American Southwest, Texas, Nevada, the Great Plains, or the Mediterranean, the performance is dramatic and consistent. In humid climates like the Gulf Coast, the Southeast, or the Great Lakes region, anywhere with muggy summers, the effect is reduced because the air is already carrying significant moisture and the evaporation rate slows. You will still get some cooling and the full air filtration benefit regardless of humidity, but the temperature drop in a humid environment will be closer to 2 or 3 degrees Celsius rather than 6 to 8 degrees. That is still useful. Just set your expectations accordingly. Recharge the charcoal every month or two by spreading it on a tray and leaving it in direct sunlight for a full day. UV exposure and heat release the absorbed compounds from the pores and reset the material to full capacity. It doesn't wear out. It just needs refreshing. One $7 bag, if maintained, lasts an entire season. I want to leave you with this. The air conditioner in a standard North American home runs for roughly 750 hours per summer. At average electricity rates, that is between $150 and $400 in cooling costs. It also produces refrigerant emissions and requires professional maintenance. When it breaks in the middle of a July heat wave, you aren't sleeping. The system I just described costs $7, runs on water, and filters, cools, and deodorizes the air simultaneously. It works for a bedroom, a barn, a doghouse, a rabbit cage, a camper van, a dorm room, a greenhouse, or a server closet. Persian architects were engineering this 3,000 years ago, and it worked well enough that those buildings are still standing. We didn't forget this because it stopped working. We forgot it because someone figured out how to sell us something that plugs into the wall instead. Now you know how to unplug. If this ancient technology changed how you think about surviving the summer heat, please subscribe and like the video. We are uncovering the forgotten wisdom that modern industry tried to replace. Let's reclaim our independence in Gyeotrong Tong Lai. The next treasure of history will be unearthed soon.